right. Hello, everybody. So first I want to apologize. I was not able to get Screencast to work on my computer, so I'm going to be doing it with QuickTime instead. So you won't be able to see my beautiful face, but I do look forward to seeing everybody, meeting everybody in a few short weeks on campus. Okay, so my name is Meta Thomas, and I just finished up my 6th year of teaching at a charter school called Lionsgate Academy, and it's in Crystal, Minnesota, just outside of Minneapolis by about 15-20 minutes. And our mission is to serve students on the autism spectrum. So we are a gen ed school. And I don't have any sort of special education certification or anything. It's kind of baptism by fire kind of thing. But our school's really driven by a lot of special education data. So, and this data is meant to inform us on how to work with our kids and how to better our practice, figure out what sort of behavior plans are going to work, and track their patterns and that kind of thing. So I'm really interested in data just because it's become such an important part of my life as a teacher. And just as a teacher in general, today there's such a growing expectation that we quantify ourselves through data that we compile and analyze and use to improve our teaching. So data is certainly a part of all of our lives, whether we know it or not, especially with our big online presence that we're all a part of. And then last summer, when I was at the Fibers class on campus, I learned about Natalie Maibach. And what she does is she creates sculptures and musical compositions using data from weather patterns that she collects herself. And when I heard about her and saw her work, I instantly connected to it because of all this data that's connected to my life in my teaching career. And I thought how interesting to take something so objective and bring it into this subjective world of art. And so that's kind of where my interest stems from. And then in this class, as we've been exploring the criteria for portraiture and how the form and function of it has changed over time, I thought it would be interesting to explore a topic that, again, challenges that criteria given the data-saturated world that we are all living in. So here's my collection of data portraits. A official definition of a data portrait is a visual representation of a subject's or sitter's compiled data. And this could be tracked scientifically or self-tracked. And so I'm going to bring you through a couple of artists who do both. I'm going to start by maybe taking a look at an artist who is interested in it tracking himself. And this is Anquara. And this is called I Got Up. And these are postcards that he would send. He had a stamp that he could change the day and just said, like, I got up at, and then it was like a timestamp. And he would send it out to a few chosen friends and colleagues. And this is actually part of a trilogy series called I Got Up, I Went, and I Met. And so each day for over 10 years until he actually lost his stamp. That's when he stopped doing it. But he would record, so he traveled a lot as an artist, and so he would have a photocopied map of each city he was in each day, and then he would draw the route that he would travel in that city for that day. And then in I Met, he would keep lists of every day. Every day had its own list of all the people that he met that day. And so some days the only person on that list would be his wife, because that's the only person that he interacted with for that day. And so it's interesting to see an artist be so intrigued on, I guess, just tracking probably what he's considering to be the most essential parts of his human experience that day, for each day, for 10 years. There's a good video linked down here if you want to learn a little bit more about it. Bringing us to the current day, this is an artist named Hassan Ilali. I don't know if I said that right. I'm sorry. I probably botched that. But he's an artist and a professor, and his interest in self-tracking his own data stems from an experience shortly after 9/11 where he was getting on a plane, and he flies a lot. So, but he was wrongly placed on a terrorist watch list. And so the FBI detained him, and he had to basically prove his identity to them through all these different, I think he took like 9 lie detector tests, and they finally cleared him. But since then, what he's done is he takes sometimes up to 100 photos a day, what he eats, where he sleeps, where he sits, where he is, and posts them to this website. I think it's called Tracking Transients. And along with his GPS coordinates. And he's been doing that ever since. And so it's just it's interesting to think about how much you're putting yourself out there, but that you need to do that to prove your identity. So there's something about that self-tracking and identity seeking that interests me in this piece. Okay, so now I want to take you down to an artist that's kind of interested in a little bit more about the scientific tracking. This is called Data Portrait Ariana by Kristen McIver. And this is actually inspired by faceprint data, which social media sites use to identify faces in posted pictures. So like on Facebook, when it says, would you like to tag John Thomas in this photo? This is kind of like the code that those sites use to recognize a person's likeness, which then is projected as our identity, so that we can almost be deduced down to this sequence of squares, and this pattern, and then that is our identity and our likeness. It's interesting to explore more of her work. Next, I'm going to bring you to Nicholas Felton. And this piece right here is called Activity. And this is just one of 16 visualizations in his 2012 annual report. And what he has done is he's developed an app called The Reporter. This is available in your app store for $4. And what it does is it randomly surveys the sitter throughout the day and then creates visualizations based on that data. And so here he's tracked it for an entire year. He has compiled all of these things into his annual report. And so let's see, how do I put it? So this, I guess, to me brings up an aspect of the viewer, in the sense that I feel like this is so much just more about Mr. Felton and his own data for like maybe a self-reflection type of purpose, but the connection to the viewer is questionable. So that's one of the implications that I'm kind of seeking to explore in my research. Next, I'll bring you up to IMI, and this is by Legrano Reese, and that's a duo. That's their 2 last names combined there. They also developed an app that asks the sitter 11 questions a day. 3 times a day, so morning, noon, and night. And it takes all of that information along with information from a Fitbit. And it translates all of these things into colors, which are displayed in real time on this custom-made fiber optic weaving. And so a sitter's sitting period lasts anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So basically these colors breathe in and out based on your physical movements and your answers to these questions. The colors are linked to, rats, I forgot it, I have it here. The Pilchik's Wheel of Emotions, where the colors are tied to emotions, and some other color field research. So that is another one. Next, I'm going to take you to Lori Frick. And she is amazing. I spent probably hours on her site looking and reading at all of her stuff. And she's got some really great YouTube talks out there as well. So it was really hard to pick just one. Her work is so amazing and just beautiful. So do check out her site. Miss Frick is interested in self-tracked data. So she does mostly artwork based on her own life, but also of other people. This one here is called 7 Days of a Woman 32. So this is a woman age 32 who self-tracked her data for a week. And so what she does then is that she translates this data, and so that there's a key that corresponds each color to what the person was doing at that time, whether it's eating or socializing or time on the web. And so she'll track anything from time, sleeping and eating patterns, travel habits, stress, mood, physical health statistics like heartbeat rate, that kind of thing, and presents all this data into symbolic, abstract patterns. And she really feels as though humans connect with patterns intuitively, which is interesting because one of the implications, again, with this type of portraiture is that we're not seeing faces, that as part of our human experience, we can intuitively read and read the emotions. Here, it's not quite so intuitive. We have to know, we have to see that key, and we have to read about the meanings behind it in order to really understand and connect with the sitter. But Ms. Frick also really stresses that these kind of portraits are a way for us to learn about ourselves, nuances and details that we never knew. And so she calls her visualizations metaphors of the human experience. She's also created an app called FrickBits, and this tracks your travel patterns. And of course, I downloaded it instantly. It's free, and it's really beautiful. And I think when you read into her app a little bit more, it's meant to remind you of the places that you frequent often, and the little details or crumbs, as she calls them, like these dots right here, that you miss along the way because you're so in tuned with getting to the place that you need to be and other things that consume our life. So another interesting thing to check out by her. I want to go next to Virgil Wong's work. This is called a symptom portrait. So this is symptom data portrait number 5, Bell's palsy. And so what he has also created an app, if you see the pattern here, where patients can track their symptoms for 30 weeks. He also meets with the patients in this time period, and in their meetings, he'll draw their, sketch their likeness, eventually picking one that he feels best represents the person. Now, what I love about this kind of artwork is that it's an entry point for a better collaboration between parent and doctor using art. What a great thing. So there is his work. I want to move on to people who use a little bit more scientifically tracked data, where it's not involving so much of self-tracked. So this is Sergio Albiach. He's a Spanish artist from Barcelona, and he creates what he calls generative portraits. And so, again, he's created a computer program and an app that will take a photo of the person, but then create these brush strokes on top of it using real-time data. So in this case, this is created when this person is driving a car, so it'll track the driver's driving habits, so like speed, braking habits, fuel consumption, and that sort of thing, and then draw the portrait accordingly. So if the person drives faster, the brush strokes are made more swiftly. What he talks about is that with this program, he's going to be able to continue to create portraits and make art long past he's no longer living. So that's an interesting concept too, that as an artist you can be gone, but your artwork can still continue to be made. All right. Now on to something really crazy. This is Heather Dewey Hagborg. And this piece right here is a 3D model. And that's the evidence that she gathered, forensic evidence that she grabbed just from a street of a random stranger. So she'll collect things like gum, hairs, cigarette butts, that kind of thing. And then she takes that data and extracts the DNA from it and compares it to the human genome database and determines various traits, anywhere between 40 and 50 traits, from gender to ethnicity, and so many more things. And then enters all of this stuff into a 3D program connected to a 3D printer, and then it prints their portrait. And I mean, what's crazy about this is that these sitters have no idea it's happening. So again, you go back to the criteria that we've been talking about and this awareness. It's interesting. And it's also fascinating to think that all of these things that we discard and we take for granted that include our things of our identity, like our DNA, all this data that we leave out in the world, and what could happen to it. Now, there's also great things that she's done to help the criminal justice system as well, involving this technology. So it certainly has the potential to do wonderful things. So there's kind of my overview. And so just kind of to summarize, a lot of the things I'm researching here in the issues with this kind of portraiture is the changing role of the artist to data miner, and the role of the sitter in their awareness, as in this DNA portrait here, but also the disclosure of data. And so you get to kind of pick what data you want to disclose, and there is a subjectivity to it when you're self-tracking it as well. And then also the role of the audience. And as the viewer, could there possibly be a disconnect when there's not that intuitively recognizable face and expression to read, and that you have to really understand the meaning behind a lot of these portraits in order to grasp the identity of the sitter. And then finally, I'm interested in exploring how this type of artwork can really pave the way for the bridging of artwork into sciences and mental health and business, a way to find new uses for art. So I look forward to hearing some of your comments and meeting you all in a couple weeks. Thanks.